G'day everyone and welcome to Inside Rugby. My name is Mark. I'm a Kiwi rugby fan living here in beautiful Cancun in Mexico. And yesterday we saw one of the epic Six Nations rugby games in history. It was absolutely amazing. I'm going to try and do my best to review that game for you all now. So let's get stuck into it. Now, before each game in this year's competition, I put up a poll for you all to vote on who you think's going to win each of these games. And as you can see, for this particular game, 73% of you thought Scotland was going to win, and just 27% were on the side of Wales. There's no doubt about it that Wales, with a young team coming into this game, were an unknown factor. And Scotland, with Gregor Townsend's team, who was pretty much an experienced team from the Rugby World Cup, barring a couple of injuries, was likely to be the favourites heading into this game. But we never could have imagined what was going to happen. Ben O'Keefe was the referee from New Zealand, and it was a packed 70,000 people in the Principality Stadium in Cardiff to see whether or not Scotland was going to be able to overturn their 22-year voodoo of not being able to win against Wales in Wales. Now the game got underway, and in the first few minutes we saw a little bit of a tussle backwards and forwards as each teams were really trying to figure each other out. A little bit of kicking down into each other's half and then a few probing runs, but no one really taking the ascendancy at that stage in the first couple of minutes of the game. And it wasn't until the 5th minute of the game when Scotland got a penalty within kicking range, and that man Finn Russell stood up to take his first kick of the day, and it was successful. So after 5 minutes, Scotland went ahead 3-0. Now for yesterday's game, I decided to watch the vision on TV but listen to BBC Wales as the commentary, because I thought that might be the most entertaining way to watch this particular game. And it was right from the outset. They were very, very passionate, the commentators from Wales on this one. But in those next few minutes after Finn Russell had taken that successful penalty attempt, we saw Wales getting into a little bit of trouble. They were giving away a lot of penalties. In fact, Ben O'Keefe gave them a bit of a warning, which was very early on in the game, I thought, but they were infringing a lot of the time, and this was giving Scotland the emphasis to be able to move forward and put a number of attacks together. And we already saw that inside centre, Tupulotu, really taking on some great runs and making some damage in against the Welsh line, and I thought this was only a matter of time before Scotland were going to be able to open Wales up if they carried on playing in this manner. Scotland continued the raids towards the Welsh line, and one thought it was only a matter of time before they were going to be able to score a try, and that's in fact what happened. From a line out, there was a rolling maul, and in the 11th minute Schoeman went over for Scotland and scored a fantastic try for them after really them dominating that first period of play. Finn Russell came up, took the conversion attempt, and before we knew it, Scotland were out to 10-0. Later in the 14th minute, we saw Wales getting down into the Scottish 22 with a good penalty kick that took them down close to the line. It was an opportunity for Wales to have an attacking line out, and we thought that there was probably going to be an opportunity for Wales to put some points on the board. Unfortunately, there was a turnover in the line out. Scotland got the ball, and they were able to clear that threat from Wales at that particular point in time. As we headed towards the 20 minutes of the game, Wales were getting the ball, but they were actually running from side to side. They weren't making any decisive breaks through the Scottish defensive line, and Scotland's defence was pretty good. As is normally the case when you've got a bit of momentum in the game, things tend to go your way, and Wales kicked the ball in a bit of an exchange between fullback and number 10, and Finn Russell got the ball for Scotland, saw a great opportunity for a 50-22 and took it, and before we knew it, Scotland were back on attack in the Wales 22. It was a very, very good kick, and there was a degree of calm and peacefulness about Finn Russell at this stage of the game. He was operating in a very good level, and he was very confident in the way that things were going for Scotland. 1 minute later, they got another opportunity for a penalty. Finn Russell got up and kicked the goal successfully. So Scotland, after 21 minutes, were ahead 13-0, and it didn't look like Wales were getting into this game at all. The crowd weren't in the game. It was very, very quiet in the Principality Stadium, exactly what Gregor Townsend and his crew would have wanted. to try and silence that crowd in the first 20 minutes of the game. So as far as Scotland was concerned, mission accomplished. Between the 20 and 30 minute mark, we saw Wales getting a little bit more of the ball, but they were making too many mistakes and they weren't making any headway into the Scottish defence. And as this was starting to mount, the pressure was starting to tell, and it was obvious that Wales were just not having the right solutions on the field at the time. Between the 20 and 30 minute mark of the first half, we saw the two teams going back into a bit of an arm wrestle, and it was thanks to White and Finn Russell, halfback and first five for Scotland, that they were really able to control this game. When Wales did get the ball, they looked a little bit clueless. They couldn't find ways through the Scottish defence, and the question mark was now 13 points to 0 down. Were Wales going to be able to find a way back into this game? On the 30 minute mark, things got worse for Wales, and it was a little bit of magic from Finn Russell and Duhan van der Merwe that set up a fantastic try for van der Merwe to go over. Finn Russell put van der Merwe through a gap. He then jinked around the outside of the defence and scored a wonderful try for Scotland. Russell had the conversion attempt to make it 20 points to 0 to Scotland after 31 minutes, and he didn't miss that opportunity. So Scotland were really grabbing this game by the scruff of the neck, and again the Welsh crowd weren't in it at all. And when we did see Gregor Townsend in the stands looking at this game, he looked pretty happy with what he was seeing from Scotland. Was there a way back for Wales in this game, and how were they going to find it? That was really the question. Surely this momentum that Scotland had built up wasn't going to be able to be maintained for 80 minutes, although at that stage we didn't know. And then after that try was scored leading up to the 35th minute, we had a little bit of backwards and forwards again, but on the 35th minute mark we had a very big incident and perhaps a turning point in this particular game. Crosby, the flanker for Scotland, went in and did a very hard tackle on Costello, the number 10 for Wales, and Costello ended up having to leave the field. Now this was an incident that in some other games may have brought a yellow card, might have brought a red card. I'll let you make a note in the comments on this one whether you thought that Crosby should have been sent from the field for that tackle on Costello. They looked at it, they decided that it wasn't dangerous with any intent, and Crosby, I thought, was rather lucky to stay on the field after that one. But Costello wore the brunt of it. He got taken off for an HIA, and we never saw him again in the game. Now that brought on Ian Lloyd for cap for Wales, and just before half time on the 37th minute mark, Wales got down onto attack again. They had another attacking line-out, but the line-out was again a shambles, and the Welsh line-out in that first half was absolutely terrible. They had an opportunity on a couple of occasions to get down and put pressure on Scotland to potentially score points, and they fluffed them up both times. So just with a few minutes to go in the first half, Wales threw away another opportunity. We went to half-time at 20 points to 0 to Scotland. Commentary team that I was listening to were saying, how long would it be in the second half before half of the crowd would get up and leave this game? Very interesting comment, I thought. So summarising that first half, well, it was all Scotland, it was all Finn Russell controlling the game, and when Scotland did run, they looked dangerous again with Tuipulotu and Hugh Jones doing their normal things through the back line. But also Rowe from fullback was having a good game, I thought, for Scotland. Their forwards were good. Ritchie was good. Gray was good. The front row was doing a good job against Wales as well. And there weren't really too many bad performers for Scotland in that first half. Now the danger of winning this far ahead at half-time is, can you keep that momentum going throughout the entire game? And good world-class teams can do that. They put the throttle down in the second half and they take off with it. Whether or not we're going to see that from Scotland in this game, we had to wait and see. Now Warren Gatland on the other side would have been pretty unhappy with his boys making so many mistakes in that first half, and one felt if they actually tried to minimise some of those mistakes, they would have had a lot better go at Scotland. As I mentioned and referenced in my review so far, that a couple of occasions they were close down to the Scottish line. If they'd converted those two opportunities into converted tries, we would have been looking at 20 points to 14 at half time. They didn't do that. We weren't looking at that score, and Warren Gatland had to get these guys believing in themselves to get out there and give it a go in the second half. I was expecting a lot of changes from the Welsh team into the second half. I thought Gatland was going to throw everything at the wind here to try and get Wales back into this team. He had a couple of really interesting people on the bench. Lloyd was one of them that came on in that first half to replace Costello, and he also had Grady sitting on the bench as well. I thought we were going to see him early in the second half. They needed to have some attacking players. Thomas Williams was another that I thought we might see early in the second half, as Wales tried to chase this game, at least put some respectability into the score in the second half. So we did see those changes from Wales, and we saw Thomas Williams coming on and Grady, and we saw, as I said before, Lloyd starting that second half as well for Wales. However, as the game got underway, we didn't have to wait long for Scotland to make things even worse for Wales, and it was in the 42nd minute, and we had Finn Russell and Van der Merwe doing their magic yet again, and scoring another try to Duhan van der Merwe. The guy had come into this game, and Scotland versus Wales was the only game in the Six Nations where Van der Merwe hadn't scored a try against their opponent until this game, and within 42 minutes of this game he'd scored 2 tries. So Finn Russell had a conversion attempt, he got that over, and before we knew it, in the second half, it was 27 points to 0 to Scotland. And I expected some of the crowd to get up at this stage and start leaving the Principality Stadium. But if they did do that, they were going to miss out on something very, very magical that was about to happen. Now, I'm pretty sure no one watching this video today would had any imagination what was about to happen in this game. 27 points to 0 after 42 minutes to Scotland, and they looked as though they had this game completely under control. But in the 45th minute, things started to change. Wales started to get some momentum. They started attacking. Those new players that had come on had started to show their impact, and it was getting quite exciting. But could they get to score some points? Well, it was all answered in the 47th minute when Wales went down onto attack. They got a rolling more, and Botham went over for a great try for Wales. And another pivotal thing happened in that point of play. Turner got sent off on a yellow card for Scotland, so Scotland were down to 14 men. Wales had just scored a try. They got their backs up a little bit. Unfortunately, Lloyd, the young guy coming on for Wales in the number 10 jersey, he missed the conversion to that try, so the score was still 27 points to 5 after 45 minutes of the game. Now, the way that Warren Gatland celebrates his players for scoring a try is he took them off, so both of them ended up going straight off after he scored that try, and Alex Mann came on to replace him. And this is a young guy that's been playing fantastically well in domestic rugby at the moment, so it's going to be interesting to see how he would go. But there was a little bit in the wind here because it felt like Wales were really starting to get into this game, and they started putting a lot of emphasis and momentum into running the ball, and it started to have an immediate impact. And for the next 5 minutes, it was all Wales in this game. The momentum just switched like someone had turned on a light switch. It was absolutely incredible. They started penetrating with great runs. They started putting the Scottish under a lot of pressure. The penalty count went up against Scotland 11-3. It was really significant. Ben O'Keefe started warning Scotland that they would get a player sent off if they were going to infringe more in the breakdowns. And you could just feel that this game was turning on its head. And continued, and in the 53rd minute, Thomas Williams put Rio Dyer through a gap. Absolutely brilliant run. Dyer ended up scoring a try, and before we knew it, Wales were ticking over the scoreboard. Lloyd stood up, took the conversion, got this one over, and you could feel that he was getting a little bit of confidence in this game. And what I saw from Lloyd in those opening minutes of the second half were very impressive. He's a good young player, and he started moving this Welsh team around the field with positive intent, and that's exactly what they needed earlier in the first half. However, it was a good try from Wales. They got the conversion over. Wales were back to 27 points to 12, and there was a feeling within the crowd, and there certainly was in my room watching this game, that could Wales actually come back and do this? They were looking very, very good. Scotland had all of a sudden stopped playing rugby, and it was through the pressure that Wales was putting on them. This young team that lacked any fear was taking it to Scotland, and they were making them look very, very ordinary. Scotland started making poor decisions. They looked very tired as they were having to make more and more tackles, and it was a very realistic opportunity that Wales were going to push Scotland all the way for the remainder 20 odd minutes of this game. 58th minute, Ben O'Keefe gave Finn Russell a talking to and said, calm your team down, there's too many penalties coming. and it was only because of the pressure that Wales was putting on phase after phase after phase, and there was nothing really that Scotland were doing that were able to stop this. So there was no surprise in the 60th minute when Tuipulotu got a yellow card. He was sent from the field. He was the scapegoat that Ben O'Keefe was looking for in this game, because he started warning people in the very beginning that he was going to send people off. And I thought that was a little bit of negativity in the refereeing of this game so early on in the game. I thought that we could have seen more positive talk from the referee instead of warning and threatening the players that they were going to be potentially sent from the field. Well, that didn't help Tuipulotu. He was on the bench for 10 minutes, and this was going to really have a big impact on the game as Wales were throwing more and more phases of play together against the Scottish team. The crowd had now come into the game. The Principality Stadium was alight with sound and cheering from the crowd, and this was going to be an exceptionally good last 20 minutes of rugby, that's for sure. Just 1 minute after Tuipulotu got off the field, we had a break from Wales, and it was that man Wainwright who got through a gap and scored under the post for Wales. It was a fantastic try. Wainwright had been one of the players that had ignited this comeback for the Welsh team, and he was playing extraordinarily well, leading from the front with some magnificent ball carries, and he really got up there and he deserved that try under the post. Try by Wainwright, the conversion was kicked, and before we knew it, the score was back to 27 points to 19, and everybody was starting to believe that Wales could get back and possibly win this game. It was extraordinary scenes at the Principality Stadium. Scotland were just capitulating in front of everybody's eyes. Every time the TV cameras went on to Gregor Townsend and his team in the stand, they looked extremely worried, as were Finn Russell and the players on the field. It didn't seem to matter what Scotland were trying to do from a defensive point of view. They weren't able to stop this Welsh juggernaut as they kept putting phases after phases together. It was brilliant rugby across the whole field. In the 66th minute, Wales went on the attack again. It was that man Rio Dyer that had opened Scotland up at the back, and he was unlucky not to find a connecting support player he could have put away for a try. But it didn't matter, because just a couple of minutes later, Wales were deep down on attack again. A rolling maul ensued, and they scored another magnificent try. And it was just something really amazing to watch, this Welsh comeback, because they were so far out of this game even after 42 minutes when Scotland were leading 27 points to 0. And then all of a sudden, with a kick to come, they had an opportunity to get back to 27 points to 26. And that's exactly what happened. Lloyd stood up, took the conversion as though he was a seasoned professional, had been in this Welsh team for years. And with 12 minutes left to play, we had a game on our hands, a 1-point game. Who would have thought after 42 minutes that's what we would have been looking at? So it's just a matter of time, and everybody was probably thinking at this stage whether or not Wales were going to be able to finish this off and get an amazing, incredible comeback win of this game. But as the next few minutes started to unfold, we saw Scotland coming back into the game. They started getting a little bit more of belief. Tuipulotu come back on the field again, and they were back up to 15 men, which certainly helped them at that period of play. Last 10 minutes, the pendulum started to swing back a little bit towards Scotland. It looked as though Wales had emptied the gas tank, making that incredible run back from 27 points to 0 to get back to 27 points to 26. So Scotland got a bit of possession in that last 10 minutes. They started creaking their way down towards the Welsh line and started putting a little bit more pressure on Wales. Unless Wales were going to do a coast-to-coast try, it didn't look like they were going to be able to win this game. But importantly, Scotland were keeping possession down in the Welsh territory, and therefore Wales weren't even getting the opportunity to go for a drop goal or to get a penalty. Did get the ball in that last 10 minutes. The Scottish defence was a lot more improved. It was stable. They were able to stop Wales from making those decisive runs that we'd seen in the previous 20 or 30 minutes of the game. And as a result of that, that's what ended up winning Scotland this particular game. In the 80th minute, we saw another great Scottish attack. Van der Merwe picked up the ball just metres from the line. He went over the line. He placed the ball down on the leg of a Welsh player. And as a result of that, Ben O'Keefe held up, and no try was awarded. But that was the end of this epic encounter between Wales and Scotland. And you wouldn't have known it that Scotland had finally won in Wales after 22 years. At the end of the game, they were absolutely exhausted. They were absolutely dead tired on their feet, because that Welsh comeback was something absolutely extraordinary. And for me, it would have been a really strange feeling for Scotland, because after all those years of not being able to beat Wales in Cardiff, they'd finally done it, yet it just seemed as though Wales actually created this game into the epic thriller that it was, and they did. They came back from 27 points to 0 down. So the celebrations would have been fairly mixed. I'm sure Gregor Townsend would have kept it quite balanced by the time the boys got into the room. And let's face it, at the end of the day, they won the game. They overcame the voodoo of not being able to beat Wales in Wales, and that 22-year of history has now come to an end. But what an epic encounter. And you know what, it must have been one of those games for the ages because of that voodoo that Scotland had on them. 27 points to 0. You thought there was probably no way in the world that Wales were going to come back into this game, yet they did it, and it was a fantastic performance. I think Warren Gatland would have got the boys into the sheds and given them all a pat on the back. There was one bridge too far for them to get a win out of this game, but what they showed in that last 25 to 28 minutes of the game was absolutely fantastic. And if this young Welsh team can start putting some consistency together and believing in themselves, I think they found a magic one in this Ian Lloyd. He's an absolutely brilliant player. And also Winnett at fullback had a fantastic game as well. But the Welsh forwards got into it in the second half, led by Wainwright, who was the player of the match. I can't disagree with that. He scored that fantastic try, but beyond that, he was making some fantastic breaks. He was winning ball for the Welsh in all those breakdown situations that were critical after half-time that really got Wales back into this game. But it was Wales across the board. Grady, we saw making some fantastic runs. Rio Dyer, who I've talked about a lot in my previous Welsh-related videos of being able to break games open. That's what he did again today. And it was a whole Welsh unit going forward with a lot of momentum and self-belief behind them. And if that young team can continue to do that, well, they might cause an upset or two in this year's Six Nations competition. Now, England will play Wales at Twickenham next weekend, and it's really interesting if you compare the second half of this game, the way that Wales played versus the way England played against Italy. Day and night, isn't it, in terms of the enthusiasm, the momentum, the way the ball was thrown around, the momentum that the Welsh players had compared to what England were doing against Italy. It's going to be a fantastic game in Twickenham, and I think these Welsh players are going to be able to go there with a lot of self-belief that they can knock England off at Twickenham, and that's going to be one that I can't wait to see next weekend. On the flip side, we've got to see Scotland playing France at Murrayfield. That's also going to be an interesting game. Once Gregor Townsend sits this team down and says, boys, at the end of the day, you won. You bet the voodoo in Cardiff. Now we've got an opportunity to knock France off at home. And after what France showed us against Ireland in that first game, I think there's a great opportunity for Scotland, but they're going to have to play for 80 minutes next weekend. I think if we look at the Scottish team, it's probably their Achilles heel, isn't it? They haven't been able to put consistent 80 minutes of that kind of performance together. In the first half against Wales this weekend, they were very, very good. Wales were poor, however, but I thought that Scotland did some really good things to be able to get that momentum. And they've got game changers, haven't they? No doubt about it. And Finn Russell and Van der Merwe and Tupulotu, they've got some people that can really break the line open and do some magical things. But when they get put under a lot of pressure, as we saw Wales doing in the second half, then it's a different Scottish team. And I think we're going to see Ireland, and we're going to see probably France and even England do this to Scotland throughout the Six Nations. So it's going to be interesting to see how they respond to that, because their defensive patterns early in that second half were terrible, and it really allowed Wales to get back into this game. But I'm not too sure there was many teams in World Rugby that would have been able to stop Wales with that particular momentum for 25 minutes of that second half. They were just simply outstanding. So there we go. That's the end of the first weekend of the Six Nations for 2024. 3 epic games. We had winners in Ireland, England and Scotland. And did you pick those 3 for this weekend? Let me know in the comments if you did. Also, let me know in the comments, did you watch this game between Wales and Scotland? What did you think of it? Were you on the edge of your seat in that second half? And did you think Wales were going to get across the finish line? What do you think of Scotland breaking their voodoo of 22 years not winning in Wales? Hats off to them. Well done to them. And it's going to be a very exciting encounter next weekend in Murrayfield. I'm going to be sticking around and making a lot of preview videos for those games for next week, so if you haven't already hit the subscribe button, do that. Give this video a thumbs up, share it with all your rugby mates, and let's get ready for another epic weekend of Six Nations rugby next weekend. That's it for me in this video. I'll be back again during the week with some previews of the games for next weekend. Until then, stay well, stay safe everybody, keep enjoying your rugby, and it's time to say adios from here in beautiful Mexico. Bye for now.